Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to try and do this all in one go. We're going to be painting a Japanese soldier today. One of the things that I didn't record but is in several other videos is my two-color process for priming miniatures. What I do is I start with a dark color and I shoot that from the bottom, and then I go over that with a lighter zenithal over top. So for this one I went with it's just US olive drab. It's Vallejo. I'll put a link to it in the description. And then on the top of that, I did a very light zenithal prime with English uniform over top. And that gave me like a very subtle light brown tone over the green, which I kind of used to set up the base gradient. So then on top of that, and you'll see me here, I'm doing the face, and I'll sort of go through what I'm doing here. But essentially, I'm building dark to light, beginning with the darkest color, the dark brown, and then moving into this lighter, warmer flesh tone. And this process takes it's a good bit of back and forth. Blending highlights and lowlights, and going in and correcting lowlights and restructuring the face. Like you have to work on the contour. But I'm really trying to use the sculpt to my advantage and not to overwork it, so I have a nice contrast from dark to light. I'm just adding little highlights here and there, and then blending them in with what is called glazing. And a glaze effect is really just a very diluted, thinned down application of the brightest paint color from dark to light. So you see me go through doing it here. I've just got very thin amount of the lightest light paint color, and I'm just applying it to the cheek, and then I'm thinning that down with even more water and pulling up from the bottom up to the highest. This process has taken me a long time to really get comfortable with. I'm certainly not a master at it, but I do practice it a lot, and I spend a lot more time on the face than I do anything else. You'll see me here moving into the uniform color. So I started with Japanese uniform from Vallejo, and I just thought it was too yellow compared to the references that I was looking at online. So I changed that up, and I started mixing it in with medium gray, which is a nice warm gray color. And I started going over all of the Japanese uniform colors I originally painted. So just started to pick out the raised edges, the highlights, and find like areas that I could still create like the undulating shadows, and then start to like pull the contrast up on the uniform. So this goes on for a while. I'm going to speed it up in a few areas because it's really just the same process. Like here we go, speeding it up. But you want the water, like you want the paint to be diluted with enough water that it flows really evenly, and that the low lights from the primer make the gradient from dark to light much more natural and smooth looking. So I find you can achieve that with that same glazing effect that I applied on the face with the uniform itself. And this process is very similar to the face painting, where you've got your highest color light. In this instance, it's the medium gray, and the U.S. olive drab and a little bit of that English uniform that I spray painted on are really, doing a lot of the heavy lifting for me in terms of creating a natural shadow effect. It just feels, I think, very like it just feels good to me to have this green army man color base underneath this kind of medium gray color. The shadows flow and feel pretty natural, which is kind of fun. Here I'm just kind of blocking in those colors and trying to dilute it in certain spaces so it doesn't get too thick and cover up too much of the shadow. So if you really start to work the paint, the more water you add to it, the thinner the application will be. Again, this is essentially called a glaze, but you can use these natural shadows that formed from the primer to your advantage. So much of this painting has already been, I think, in my mind, it's like almost like a cheat code to use these primers to lay down these really smooth base coats. And when you're working with military figures, specifically like anything Army man, really, the U.S. olive drab does like so much of the heavy lifting for you right out of the gate. Like it creates a great shadow. Um, Sometimes what I'll do is do like a black undercoat and then I'll spray the green over top, and you get like a real great contrast. And for this one, I decided to go with all green and then that little bit of English uniform over top because I wanted something that uh, would give me like a more grounded color. Sometimes the blacks are really high contrast, and I wanted the green to pull back on that a little bit. So instead of going pure black, I just saved pure black for only the metal bits of the weapon, and instead decided to go with like a more earthy tone. It's just a different thing to try. I'm a big fan of experimenting. I'm always trying different things, and the a lot of the toy soldiers of San Diego figures that I have actually come in they're naturally like in a dark green plastic, and these Japanese soldiers come in a tan. So with the dark green figures, I'll usually spray paint them black first. This way I'm just not spray painting them the same color they already are, and I want to create a bit more of that contrast. It's really just a personal choice. And yeah, so you can kind of see that this process is sped up by a lot. In most cases, or in some cases, it's sped up by as much as 1,000%. But what I do is I try and stop and slow down at the beginning and end of any sort of time I change positioning or switch paint. So you kind of get like I can just give you that pause. Here's a perfect examples. Now I'm going into khaki and I'm going to start painting the raised edges of these wraps that are around the calves and the feet. I guess the feet are going to be brown, but you can kind of see that this gives me a bit of contrast. They're all very analogous colors, which means that they're all very similar. So that's sort of like the crux of painting army men is everything. If you're going to be it's like close to historically accurate, I guess you want to say. It all kind of is very samey, and where I try and make it different as best I can is in different satchels and pouches. Uh, in this case, the Japanese soldiers all have this long sheath that holds their sword, which I think is pretty cool. It's just like an interesting design element. This particular guy has some netting over his helmet, so the helmet's already that they olive drab green color, so I can just apply a bit of the khaki using the side of the brush, and it's not as wet as I was painting the other parts of the figure, so it's almost like a dry brush, like a soft. It just pulls right up on the net, so it creates a subtle difference. And then here I'm going to use start using cavalry brown, and that's going to be like my main differentiating color until I get into the green leaves at the bottom of the base. But the browns and the medium gray and the khaki, like the cavalry brown has like a redness to it, so it's red and green are complementary, so it does work kind of well, but it still kind of feels like it's not that interesting to look at, in my opinion, in terms of like I guess when you compare it to like a fantasy model, right? Like the realistic nature of these things requires you to be much more subdued and to have the contrast. In my opinion, the contrast does a lot of the work here, like especially in the face, like the draw of the face, like those highlights on the cheeks and a little bit on the eyes are more dramatic than the uniform is, and that I think that for me personally is what kind of gives them a unique lifeness, like a lifelikeness to them, and then there's always little things depending on the quality of the sculpt. I think the Toy Soldiers of San Diego figures, the TSSD figures, are pretty good detail wise. I mean, they're not perfect, but you can use some paint tricks like scratching and highlights to give them a bit more depth and detail. But you can kind of see it with the sheath. There's this bottom part of the sheath that has this weird connection to the figure's butt. Like they just sort of blend together. And it's really not clear where the sheath ends and where the butt begins. So you have to kind of make your own decisions with that. So there's like some quirky stuff. Like the detail isn't that high, but it's high enough that it's fun to practice with, and you can still make it look great, especially if you focus on, like I said, the face, which I believe is like what everyone always tells me too, is like the first thing people look at. I will say that the Toy Soldiers of San Diego figures don't have sculpted eyes in most cases. They're just sort of like these slits. So I've kind of given up on trying to paint good eyes. And the Japanese soldiers, they look really cool because they have like these wider eye slits, but they don't have anything in there. So it's like it doesn't really make sense to go in and try to paint the eyes. I think they look kind of cooler, like to just be black, or in this case, they're like this olive green. Now here I'm actually using black on the gun, and then I'm going to do a bit of a dry brush with mixing medium gray into the black once this is dry, and that's just going to pull up the edges a little bit. And then I'm going to use a bit of white and go over all the edges of the barrel and the knife, the bayonet, and give it a bit of a shine and a shimmer to it. I'm not going to spend a ton of time making it like super, like a super polished non-metallic metal. It's just really not that important. And when I'm really trying to give like the whole figure a cool look and make it stand out. And again, the focus is on the face, but you get to look at that machine gun, that light machine gun. It's a T97. It looks pretty cool when it's all dry brushed up, like just enough attention. And just a second ago, I was just getting the base primed up because I had some brown still left on the palette, and I wanted to use that big brush to get it covered, kind of get a sense for how the base is going to look. As I was painting this, I was thinking about what the design of the base would be. It was actually like a last minute decision to add real material to it, like the real little pieces of fake plants. So you'll see that too as I get into it. But here I'm just realizing I didn't paint the handle of the bayonet, and I don't even know if it's supposed to be brown really, but I thought it could benefit from standing out a little bit more. So again, using that reddish brown tone against the black and with the green kind of makes it pop. So we've got the backpacks out, the satchels on the belt, they stand out now more, and the boots stand out better. So like you have like these little, and that also the back of the gun too. I don't know if that's supposed to be brown, but you have these little pops of like reddish brown that they contrast nice off of all of the khaki, medium gray, greens of the uniform itself. And I'm just remembering, like right there, I didn't do the straps of the helmet, but stuff like that. Those little details help make some separation more clear. And then here I'm just kind of going back in and fixing some of the areas that I thought could probably go over again. Sometimes thin coats means you need to follow up with a second coat, so you end up, waiting the time the paint needs to dry and then going over, and that second coat will increase the contrast a bit more. You'll get some brighter brights. Just going over the straps again with that medium gray again. Actually, I think I was using khaki at that point. I forgot to make a note of it, but you can kind of see how it's working. Then I'm going to jump over to flat green, and I'm going to do essentially what's like a little dry brush over the leaves in the base. So like, I thought they were kind of cool and they looked neat. And I was like, I had this bright green color called Scorpy Green that I wanted to try to kind of give it some more contrast. So you'll see this whole process, I just kind of figuring out what the base should be. I go, I added more browns and a stippling effect, and then I go back in and tighten up the greens again before giving it one little last hit with the bright green, Scorpy green over the leaves and to give it some sheen. Then I think I actually even added in some cream white to that Scorpy green to bump them up a bit higher one more time. Then came the idea, maybe I should take some of these old pieces of like holiday wreath that I have and cut them down. I've done that in other videos too. Like there's a couple other videos where I've just sort of clipped them apart and then created like plant foliage and put them onto the base as well. And here I am finishing it up the gun, adding some white highlights. Really just trying to use I'm using the edge of the brush here. It's not a dry brush necessarily. It's still pretty damp. You kind of get a sense for it. I was looking at it, thought it looked pretty good. And it was like right at this moment, I was like, oh, you know what? Let's just take it a little bit further, a little bit more highlights with the Scorpio green, and then we'll cut up those pieces of wreath and add them in. And I'll just they're just a simple bit of glue, and having a few more leaves piled over the sculpted leaves, I thought it would add a little bit more depth. I mean, you tell me, what do you think? How do you think it turned out? I think I could even push it even a bit further as I paint up more of these guys. I can take them, add even more leaves, or maybe even add some realistic mud from Vallejo. Their textured mud could look pretty cool. I'm open to more ideas on how to make these cooler. Maybe even clipping them off of these bases and doing their own unique bases could be cool. But for the most part, I really wanted to figure out what the paint scheme could be for these guys, because the only other Japanese soldier I had painted was a year ago now. It's been quite some time. And those were some BMC Toys figures, which are not as detailed as this one. So here you can see me using the PR41 glue, which is an amazing glue for plastics. It works incredibly quickly. I'm just sort of going in here with my little trimming scissors and positioning everything. And I had these little plant leaves. I'm just trying to get them in the right spot. And thankfully, everything stayed and glue dried pretty quickly. And that darn bayonet, just no matter how much I bent it with hot water, it just kept curling back up on me. It's sort of like the thing with this softer plastic from TSSD. But yeah, it's the final result. I was pretty happy with it. I thought it was a pretty cool little guy, and I'm happy to share the results with you. Thank you for checking it out. Looking forward to the next one.